Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Lipchick, and our discussion today is international trade. Basically, we're going to focus on barriers and agreements. Okay. International trade is a key component of our economy. The U.S. is the world's leading exporter as well as the world's leading importer of goods and services. An export is a good that is sent to another country for sale, and an import is a good that is brought in from another country for sale. The main U.S. trading partners are Canada, Mexico, and China. Trade with China has grown rapidly in recent years as free market reforms in that country have led to its rapid development. And comparative advantage and specialization in manufacturing have led to job losses and changes in the United States. So, there have been some negative economic consequences that go along with some beneficial ones. Specialization, such as in car manufacturing in Japan, has led to job dislocation for many Americans. The northeastern United States has become known as the Rust Belt, as manufacturing has moved overseas into the southern and western United States. And relocating to new jobs has become time consuming and expensive and often impractical for older workers. Now, it's important to note, however, that a lot of this is beginning to change and transform as the former industrial sectors are, taking advantage of lower tax and lower property values and bringing in new companies, information companies, and so forth. So there is change on the horizon for many of these areas. To avoid problems with the loss of jobs and businesses, many nations enact trade barriers to counteract foreign competition. A trade barrier is a means of preventing a foreign product or service from freely entering a nation's territory. It can take the form of an import quota, and a limit on the amount of good that can be imported. And nations sometimes introduce voluntary export restraints, or VERs, which are self-imposed limits on the number of products shipped to a particular country. And they will do this to reduce the chance that the importing country will set up trade barriers. Okay, it's kind of like, anticipating a reaction from the other country before it happens. A tariff is a tax on imported goods. Tariffs were unpopular in the late 1800s as they kept the cost of living high for working people. Customs duties are taxes paid on certain items purchased abroad. And there are other barriers, such as high licensing fees, health regulations, and others that serve to slow and complicate trade in foreign countries, done intentionally so that, instead of using a formal measure, they use these informal measures to avoid any political problems. There are negative consequences to high trade barriers. World productive capacity is lower with a higher trade barrier. High trade barriers lead to increases in the prices of foreign goods and eliminate incentive of domestic producers to produce goods less expensively. High trade barriers can lead to a trade war, which is a cycle of increasing trade restrictions, which hurts both economies. In the 1930s, an effort was underway to increase local business and employment during the Depression, and the Smoot-Hawley tariff was passed. The average tariff on all goods was increased by 50%, with the hope that it would generate more business for American producers. Okay. However, the effect was to increase tariffs on American goods in other countries, further increasing unemployment and deepening depression. Okay. It was a major disaster. Protectionism is the philosophy of using trade barriers to protect a nation's industries from foreign competition. Some nations may have what are called infant industries, or new industries that are seeking protection from foreign competitors so that they can grow, so they have some time to get on their feet. Also, there's the issue of job protection. Okay, there's political pressure to protect jobs in certain industries, often when the cost of labor is much cheaper than in another country. And there's the issue of national security. Sometimes it is argued that some industries, such as steel and high tech, need to be protected to avoid, in the event that we need to go to war. To facilitate trade, we form international agreements with other countries. An international free trade agreement is an agreement that results from cooperation between at least two countries to reduce barriers and tariffs and trade with each other, and to trade with each other, rather. The Reciprocal Trade Agreements Act of 1934 gave the president the power to reduce tariffs by as much as 50%, and it allowed Congress to grant Most Favored Nation status, MFN status, to U.S. trading partners, and now it is called NTR, or Normal Trade Relations. There's the World Trade Organization, or WTO, which is a worldwide organization whose goal is freer global trade and lower tariffs. It was founded in 1995 to ensure compliance with the GATT Treaty, General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. And the WTO has been subject to many protests in recent years due to the perception of favoring powerful economic interests in Western industrialized nations over more vulnerable people in different parts of the world. GATT is the International Agreement to Reduce Tariffs and Trade and Expand World Trade, which was signed in 1948. The WTO also acts as a referee enforcing the rules agreed upon by member nations when there's a conflict. With the knowledge that free trade encourages economic growth, many nations have joined free trade zones. A free trade zone is a region where a group of countries agrees to reduce or eliminate trade barriers. The European Union, or EU, is a regional trade organization made up of European nations. And they have a single currency, which is the euro, which is used by member nations. Here in North America, we have NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. It is an agreement that will eliminate all trade barriers between Canada, Mexico, and the United States, creating a North American Free Trade Zone. When it was implemented, trade boomed between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. And the lasting effects are still debated, with some pointing to job losses, while others citing increased trade between the countries. The jobs that left, it is argued, probably would have gone with or without NAFTA, with companies looking for cheap labor. Okay, there's also APEC, which is the Asia-Pacific Cooperation Pact, and it is a non-binding agreement to reduce trade barriers between nations that lie along the Pacific Rim, including the United States, Canada, Mexico, Russia, Australia. Okay. And APEC works to facilitate businesses between these nations. And right now they are negotiating a Trans-Pacific Trade Agreement, which is more powerful, and there is a lot of controversy about it. Labor unions are not looking favorably on it. Okay, there's Mercosur, which is the Southern Common Market, similar to the EU, which includes Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay. And they have tariff policies to regulate imports and exports, and they can arbitrate trade disputes between member nations. And it has the goal of creating a continent-wide free trade area. There's CARICOM, which is the Caribbean Community and Common Market, which includes countries in South America and the Caribbean. And it promotes economic cooperation and integration, and cooperates on foreign policy matters also. An unfortunate result of some of these trade agreements is the phenomenon of multinational corporations. They play a role in the global economy by coordinating resources and markets, However, they often have too much power, and small nations where they decide to relocate suffer the consequences. And they use their international status sometimes to avoid environmental responsibilities and avoid taxation and so forth. Nestle, for instance, has produced some products, for instance, baby formula, and sold it to African nations, which was loaded with sugar, which was very unhealthy, wouldn't have passed muster in any Western country, but resulted in all kinds of health problems in African countries. So there are abuses that can take place with a multinational corporation depending on where it locates. Okay, that concludes my synopsis for international trade. Thank you for attending, and I look forward to seeing you in the future. Have a great day. Bye-bye.